Ambrose and I spent 7 years breaking up and getting back together. I was responsible for the breakups. He was responsible for getting us back together. But after the last time I broke up with him, he stopped trying to win me back. Instead, he started keeping a lover who looked strikingly like me. To promote her, he took away my opportunities. The Best Actress title I had spent 10 years pursuing was handed to her with effortless ease. At an awards ceremony, a reporter asked me if I regretted the breakup. I smiled and raised my hand, revealing the diamond ring on my finger. I'm getting married. The moment those words fell, everyone saw it. The heir, famous for being aloof, proud, and untouchable, suddenly had red-rimmed eyes. Chapter 1. At a fashion gala, I arrived dressed to perfection, alone. A reporter asked curiously, "Miss Ellie, didn't CEO Chan come with you this time?" Just then, a commotion erupted in the distance. Following the noise, I looked over. Ambrose Chan stepped out of a car and intimately took the hand of the woman beside him. The crowd instantly exploded with surprise, because this was the first time in 7 years that he had appeared with a different female companion. In the past, the woman by his side had always been me. Now it was Violet, a rising star famous for her innocent image. Entertainment reporters had once compared our faces. They discovered that she resembled me in several ways. With Ambrose bringing her to the event, it looked exactly like one of those stories where a substitute defeats the original and takes her place. Reporters immediately swarmed around them. I lifted my head and met Ambrose's gaze. His eyes were filled with indifference. I nodded politely, then turned away as if nothing had happened and walked toward the main hall. On the way, my manager, Iris, whispered, "No wonder Violet managed to steal your fashion resources." I kept wondering who was backing her. Turns out it's Ambrose. Did you two fight again? I shook my head. No, we broke up. Iris merely sighed, completely unsurprised. My lady, the year's only halfway over, and you've already asked for a breakup 3 times. Every single time, CEO Chan threw away his pride to coax you back. At least give in once. Otherwise that little brat Violet might really steal him away. Yeah, in everyone's eyes, I was always the one making a fuss, and Ambrose was always the one making peace. As for Violet, she was merely a toy Ambrose was using to provoke me. As long as I lowered my head, Ambrose would immediately get back together with me. But I knew better. Ambrose wasn't acting out of spite. He was sending a message. He was telling me, if you won't do it, there are plenty of others who will. I clenched my fists. The diamonds sewn into my gown dug into my skin, causing a faint sting, but the pain only made me more clear-headed. We won't get back together. My voice was firm. This time, it's really over between us. Chapter 2. Ambrose Chan and I had been together for 7 years. During that time, we broke up and reconciled more than 20 times. I handled the breakups. He handled the reconciliations. He was the heir to the Chan family empire, surrounded by countless beautiful women. Yet he was willing, time and time again, to set aside his pride just to make me happy and win me back. If I told him I missed him, he would cross continents to rush to my side and hold me in his arms. Many people told me not to be so difficult. Why keep fighting with him over gossip and tabloid rumors when it was obvious he loved me with all his heart? Why damage the relationship by breaking up over and over again? I understood that, but I could never control my emotions. Because of it, I cried alone more than once in the middle of the night. He would pull me tightly into his embrace and soothe me in his deep voice. How is that being difficult? It just means Ellie loves me too much. You're insecure because you care about me, and I'm willing to comfort Ellie. I looked up at him, my eyes red. For a lifetime? For a lifetime, he answered without hesitation. We were so young then. Love was always scorching and passionate. We always thought that if we casually said forever, we could make it happen, as if it were something simple, but that was only what we imagined. Thinking of it now, a faint bitterness spread through my chest. At that moment, Iris asked, "Why did you break up this time?" I froze. Slowly, I blinked. In the end, my gaze settled on the 2 people standing intimately together not far away. My voice was very soft. He's getting married, and he asked me to be his mistress. Iris went silent. I looked away, finishing the wine in my glass in one gulp. I hid the redness gathering at the corners of my eyes where no one could see. I told him I wasn't willing. Iris's face turned pale. After a long moment, she could only mutter, "That's absurd." Chapter 3. Yeah, how absurd. But Ambrose didn't think so. When he brought it up, there was even a hint of matter-of-fact certainty in his voice. "Ellie, I've already discussed it with Luna. She and I will only be husband and wife on paper. Privately, she won't interfere with me, and I won't interfere with her. We'll each do our own thing. We can still be together." Luna, the eldest daughter of the Sioux group, and the marriage partner chosen by the Chan family. I had accidentally learned from Ambrose Chan's secretary that the two families might be arranging a marriage alliance. I had only wanted an explanation. I thought I would hear him deny it. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect a bombshell like this. How ridiculous. My boyfriend of 7 years was getting married, and he wanted me to be his lover. I stared at the man before me. Without warning, my heart seemed to stop for a moment. Then it began pounding violently, making the tip of my nose sting with unshed tears. For a moment, I didn't know whether I should be angry at the humiliation or heartbroken over losing him. But Ambrose merely looked at me. His gaze was calm and certain, as though he had already decided I would agree. After all, I loved him so much. But the only thing I wanted to ask was, "Ambrose, were you never planning to tell me that you were getting married?" A slight frown appeared between his brows, confusion flickering in his eyes. "So what if I'm getting married? As long as I love you, isn't that enough?" "Ellie, this kind of thing is common in our circle. It's not like you've never seen it before." I had seen it. Of course I had. During the 7 years we were together, he brought me to countless gatherings among the wealthy and powerful. I had seen loving couples in front of cameras who were nothing more than strangers behind closed doors. I had also seen couples joined through business alliances who privately lived separate lives and dated whoever they pleased. But I had never imagined that Ambrose and I would become one of them. We loved each other so deeply. I had always believed we would get married, have children, spend our lives together, and grow old side by side. But I was wrong. Ambrose had never intended to marry me. All along, I had been flattering myself. I pulled my hand free from his grasp and spoke each word clearly. "But I don't want to spend my entire life as your secret lover." Ambrose frowned, yet he still patiently tried to explain. "Ellie, you're not a lover. You're my wife. You're my woman. What about Luna?" He fell silent. He couldn't deny Luna's position, yet he still couldn't understand why her existence mattered so much to me. Perhaps, from the very beginning, we had never truly belonged to the same world. I lowered my eyes, hiding their redness, and said quietly, "Ambrose, I won't be the other woman. Ellie, don't you want to be with me? We promised each other forever. You love me so much. I do love you." I looked up at him. My gaze was serious and unwavering. "But, Ambrose, I won't lose my principles just because I love you." Chapter 4. As we spoke, the season's first snow began to fall. Before long, the world outside was blanketed in white. "It's snowing." I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Then I said softly, "I remember the last time it snowed. We were curled up on the couch together under the same blanket, watching a historical drama. I remembered seeing the female lead, wearing a phoenix crown and ceremonial wedding robes. Not red, but green, a symbol of marrying into a family far above her status. I had laughed and asked Ambrose whether marrying him would count as marrying up too. At the time, you only smiled. But now that I think about it, were you laughing at me inside? Did you think I was ridiculous for dreaming of marrying you? What am I, really? A little actress. What right did I have to marry the heir of the Chan family? As I spoke, tears began to fall. I hurriedly wiped them away, trying to erase all traces of my heartbreak. It was too pathetic. I hated looking pathetic. But the more I wiped, the more tears came. A dense ache spread through my chest. Ambrose spoke, his voice strained. "I never thought that. Maybe." I curled my lips into a self-mocking smile. "But did you ever think about marrying me?" Ambrose froze. His lips parted, yet no words came out. And in that moment, I had my answer. He hadn't. He had never thought about marrying me. I had prepared myself for the truth. Yet when I finally received it, it still hurt. Blinking, I looked at him. My voice was filled with bitterness. Everyone says I fight with you and make scenes. They don't know why. But you and I both do. I wanted to get married. You didn't. You said you needed to focus on your career. You said you had to deal with your family first. I understood. So I forgave you again and again. If you had told me from the beginning that you would never marry me, why would I have spent years trying to win over your parents? Why would I have wasted so many years with you? I was so stupid. People always say love can cloud a person's judgment. I never believed it before. Now I did. Otherwise, how could I have been foolish enough to believe a flimsy excuse for 7 years? How could I have spent every day and night beside him and still failed to see what he truly thought? How could I still ache for him after being deceived? Ambrose, let's break up. At last, I said the words. Seriously, firmly. In that moment, it felt as though a tremendous weight had been lifted from both my heart and my shoulders. I felt unbelievably free, but Ambrose only looked at me. The tenderness vanished from his eyes. What remained was a deep and icy indifference. Word by word, he spoke with unmistakable clarity. Ellie, you'll regret this. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant, but after that day, contract terminations began arriving one after another. My resources, my endorsements. Companies would rather pay enormous breach of contract penalties than continue working with me, and every one of those opportunities ended up in Violet's hands. Only then did I understand. Ambrose was making an example of me. He was using actions instead of words to send a message that said, "See? If you won't be my lover, there are plenty of women who will." Chapter 5. The gala reached its climax with the arrival of a single person, Oscar, the internationally renowned director who had only recently returned to the country. Iris leaned close to my ear and reminded me. Director Oscar is here too. He's currently casting the female lead for his new film. Haven't you always admired him? I heard he's always appreciated your work as well. You have to seize this opportunity. Okay. Holding a glass of champagne, I was about to walk toward Director Oscar when I saw Ambrose leading Violet by the hand to his side. Director Oscar, Ambrose said with a smile. This is Miss Violet, whom I wanted to introduce to you. Violet caught sight of me. The satisfaction in her eyes was impossible to miss. With Ambrose personally making the introduction, Director Oscar quickly began discussing the film with Violet. I pressed my lips together, momentarily at a loss. Still, unwilling to give up without trying, I walked over. Director Oscar. Hello. And you are? Director Oscar asked, puzzled. Before I could introduce myself, Ambrose suddenly spoke. She's my former lover. Former lover. The words lingered with deliberate ambiguity. My heart skipped a beat. Turning toward him, I met the provocative look in his eyes. He was doing it on purpose. He knew I hated that word, and yet he insisted on forcing that label onto me. Looking away, I saw the cold smile on his lips. Her acting is average. Just a few words, yet they effortlessly erased 10 years of my hard work. Hearing that, Director Oscar never looked at me again. At that moment, I understood. The opportunity one had waited years for was gone. Completely gone. An emptiness opened inside me. It felt as though something precious was rapidly slipping away, beyond my reach no matter how hard I tried to grasp it. I turned and left, but at a corner backstage, I ran into Ambrose, leaning casually against the wall. He tilted his head as he looked at me, colorful lights reflected in his eyes, yet there was not a trace of warmth in them. He asked, Ellie, do you regret it now? After leaving me, you lost so much. Do you regret it now? Come back to me, and everything you want will still be yours. I looked up at him. My eyes were bright and gentle, yet there was not the slightest trace of regret within them. I smiled softly. Ambrose, I never regret my decisions. Once I let go. I let go completely. Chapter 6. Because of Ambrose's interference, all of my endorsement deals and promotional contracts were terminated. Ironically, it gave me a rare vacation. I had been in the entertainment industry for 10 years. I had always been busy. Now that I suddenly had free time, I didn't even know what to do with myself. While cleaning my apartment, I unexpectedly found a shirt in my wardrobe. A cufflink was attached to the sleeve. Black crystal. I thought about it but couldn't remember when Ambrose had left it behind. I originally intended to throw it away, but remembering how much Ambrose Chan once claimed the cufflink was worth, I set it aside instead. I didn't want to owe him anything anymore, so I contacted his secretary and told him to come collect it. On the phone, his secretary spoke softly. "Miss Ellie, CEO Chan has been talking about you constantly these past few days. He still loves you. It's just that the Chan family has been extremely firm about the marriage alliance. That's why CEO Chan resorted to this solution and asked you to be his lover." It wasn't what he truly wanted. His words were carefully chosen, yet they couldn't hide the casual indifference in his tone. To them, being a lover, being the other woman, was never considered something shameful. I simply hummed in acknowledgement. "I know." Hearing that, the secretary cautiously continued. "Miss Ellie, as long as you understand, when are you coming back? I can come pick you up." I cut him off. "I'm not going back. Ambrose and I ended a long time ago. I had already said it. I hated seeing myself humiliated, and I never regretted my choices." The moment those words left my mouth, a loud crashing sound came from the other end of the call. Bang! Something heavy had hit the floor. Then Ambrose's hoarse, low voice rang through the phone. "Then get lost. Get as far away from me as possible." So he had been listening the entire time, still as childish as ever. Whenever he made a mistake, he always sent his secretary to test my attitude first. But this time, I wouldn't soften. After hanging up, I looked at the shirt that had already been stuffed into a garbage bag. Suddenly, I wanted to go back to my hometown. I missed my parents. Chapter 7. I'll be there tonight. As I boarded the high-speed train, I called my mother. To my surprise, she immediately called for my father and cheerfully said, "Sweetheart, be careful on the way. Keep an eye on your wallet. Your dad and I will be waiting for you at the station entrance." I laughed helplessly. I was already 32 years old. I had spent 10 years fighting my way through the entertainment industry. Yet my mother was still reminding me to watch my wallet, as if I were still that young girl from more than a decade ago, leaving home for the first time to start college. The moment I stepped out of the station, I saw my parents eagerly waiting for me. As soon as I walked over, my mother grabbed my hand and looked me up and down. My father took my suitcase. Then he glanced behind me and asked, "Ellie, why did you come back alone? Where's Ambrose?" I froze for a moment. Before I could answer, my mother smacked my father lightly and pretended to be annoyed. "Ambrose must be busy. Your daughter came home, and you're thinking about someone else? What kind of father are you?" You're right. My mistake." My father immediately laughed. "I'll make Ellie's favorite spicy chicken tonight to make up for it." There was a trace of concern hidden in both of their eyes. I smiled and nodded firmly. Back home, my father went to prepare dinner while my mother helped me tidy my room. Though tidy wasn't really the right word, my room had always been clean and organized. When children grow up and leave home, parents often worry that interfering too much might hold them back. So they pour their love and longing into little details instead, like walking into their child's old room again and again, sitting there, looking around, remembering. My mother hesitated several times before finally asking, "Ellie, did you and Ambrose have a fight? Did Ambrose upset you again?" See? Whenever Iris talked about Ambrose and me, she always said I was the one causing trouble. But my mother's first thought was that Ambrose must have done something wrong. I didn't want her worrying about my relationship, so I simply said, "We broke up." But instead of looking surprised, my mother stepped closer and studied my face. Then she pulled me into her arms and whispered, "My Ellie was hurt, wasn't she?" I froze. When I learned that the man I had loved for 7 years had never intended to marry me, I didn't cry. When my resources and endorsements were taken away, I didn't cry. When people pressured me and asked whether I regretted my decision, I didn't cry, because I knew crying wouldn't solve anything. It would only make me a target for ridicule. But at this moment, wrapped in my mother's gentle embrace, the tears I had held back for so long finally broke free. I just feel like, maybe I was wrong from the very beginning. I shouldn't have accepted Ambrose's confession. I shouldn't have dated him. I shouldn't have softened and stayed with him after realizing for the first time that he never intended to marry me. Maybe I really was wrong, but my mother simply wiped away my tears and said softly, "Ellie, just like an immortal descending to the mortal world must go through a trial, perhaps Ambrose was the trial of love that you were destined to face. Our Ellie only needed 7 years to overcome it. As your mother, I should be happy, because I believe that from now on, everything in Ellie's life will go smoothly." Really? I looked up at her. Her answer came without the slightest hesitation. Of course. At that moment, the heart that had been restless for so long finally settled. Quietly, peacefully, "Your father and I will always be your support. Walk your own path boldly, and if you ever get tired, come home. My arms will always be open for you." That night, lying in bed, I watched as my mother tucked the blanket around me. Drowsiness slowly overtook me. Outside the window, the setting sun cast its final golden light across her face, painting her in warmth and tenderness. Suddenly, I said, "Mom, I want to watch the sunrise tomorrow." She lifted a hand and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Then she nodded gently. "Okay, your father and I will go with you." Mom and Dad were both here. That was enough. Chapter 8. When I woke up, my parents were already dressed and ready to go. Chisha Mountain stretched across ridge after ridge. The sun had not yet risen, and a thin layer of mist hung in the air. Only a few scattered figures could be seen along the mountain trails. As I wandered through the mountains, every breath was filled with the fresh scent of the forest. It felt as though the heaviness in my heart was slowly being washed away. Just then, a surprised voice came from behind me. "Teacher Ellie?" I turned around. A man dressed in black sportswear was jogging toward us. His dark hair was slightly damp, making his handsome features and fair complexion stand out even more. Looking at my parents, he broke into a brilliant smile. "Teachers, do you still remember me?" My parents were stunned for a moment. Then their faces lit up with surprise. Gigi, didn't you move abroad? When did you come back?" The man smiled and explained. "The research project I was working on finally ended, so I decided to come home and take a vacation." My mother gently pushed me forward. "Gigi, do you remember Ellie? You two used to play together all the time when you were little." The smile in his eyes deepened. Leaning slightly closer, he spoke in a low voice. "Ellie, do you still remember me?" I blinked and smiled. "Of course I do. Gail, my childhood companion. Back when we lived in the same alley, we were neighbors. At school, we were desk mates. His parents were always busy with their business and often forgot to pick him up. My parents, both elementary school teachers, believed that every child in the world was precious and deserving of care, so they would bring him home with us. We ate together, played together, went to and from school together. We were almost always side by side. Many children used to tease me, saying I was his child bride. As a result, Gail beat them up so badly that no one dared say it again. That afternoon, while I applied medicine to the injuries on his hands, I quietly told him those people weren't worth fighting over. Gail flicked my forehead. "I wasn't fighting because of them. I was fighting because of you." I froze. Looking at me, he sighed softly. Then he rubbed the spot he had just flicked, even though he had barely used any force. When he spoke again, his voice was youthful but gentle. "Ellie, you're a girl. You shouldn't have to listen to people gossiping about you. But as long as I'm here, don't be afraid. Later, though, he moved abroad with his parents. At first, we still kept in touch. We shared stories about our lives over the phone. But somewhere along the way, the calls stopped, without either of us realizing it. And now, after all these years, we had met again." Chapter 9. Over the past few years, I had neglected exercise. There was no way I could keep up with my parents' energetic pace. By the end of the hike, everyone else had gone ahead. Only Gail remained beside me. I didn't speak. Neither did he disturb the silence. He simply walked quietly at my side, watching, keeping pace. "Ellie, this is for you." He held out a plum blossom branch. Tiny droplets of water clung to the petals, making them look even more delicate and beautiful. I had no idea when he had picked it. I asked softly, "What made you suddenly give me flowers?" Gail smiled. Nothing in particular. I just wanted to wish Ellie a life filled with happiness and good fortune. I froze. Then I looked up at him. Only then did I realize that the youthful boy from my memories had long since grown into a tall and distinguished man. It was as though even the sunlight favored him. Filtering through the leaves, it fell across his body like a soft halo. The corners of his eyes curved gently upward. His smile carried warmth and tenderness. He was so strikingly handsome that it was difficult to look away. I accepted the flower and smiled softly. Thank you. At that very moment, the sun rose. Golden sunlight poured across the mountains. Brilliant. Magnificent. My mother waved toward us. Gigi. Ellie. Come over here. Let's take a picture together. Smiling, we walked over. Click. The camera shutter sounded. Time froze in that instant. In the photograph, a relaxed smile rested on my face. Ahead of me lay the road forward. Beside me stood my family and friends, and behind me shone a sky full of radiant sunlight. From this moment on, my life would begin again. Chapter 10. After that encounter, I discovered that Gail's old family house in the alley had never been sold. We became neighbors once again. Whenever we had free time, we would go hiking, have a few drinks, or simply spend time together. He never asked how I had lived these past years, and I never volunteered the answer. Until one day, after returning from an art exhibition, I spotted a familiar car parked at the entrance of the alley. I took a few steps closer. Sure enough, it was Ambrose. He was leaning against the car, his brows tightly furrowed. The ground at his feet was littered with cigarette butts. The moment he saw me, he quickly extinguished the cigarette in his hand and strode toward me. Then he noticed Gail beside me. His steps halted. Ellie, come here. But I merely glanced at him expressionlessly and walked past him. Ambrose froze. It had never occurred to him that I could be this cold toward him. Whatever he had planned to say became lodged in his throat. Not a single word came out. I had intended to leave without another glance, but noticing the curious looks from the people nearby, I stopped in front of him and asked flatly, "Do you need something?" A flicker of hope immediately appeared in Ambrose's eyes. Before he could speak, however, a car trapped behind his began honking impatiently. So I said, "If there's nothing important, please move your car. You're blocking the entrance to the alley. People can't get in or out." My tone was distant, polite, like I was speaking to a stranger. Ambrose's expression shifted slightly. A trace of helplessness appeared in his eyes. "Ellie, it's been so long. Why are you still angry? What do I have to do to make you come back with me? I really miss you. Without you around, the house feels unbearably empty." As he spoke, he stepped closer and reached for my hand. I avoided him. Even now, he still didn't understand. He still believed I was simply throwing a tantrum. He thought that if he lowered his head a little and coaxed me, I would soften like I had every other time during those 7 years. But this time was different. I would never turn back. And I was tired of Ambrose's endless persistence. So I led him somewhere secluded. Turning to face him, I spoke softly. "Ambrose, your family wants you to enter a marriage alliance, and you think it's perfectly reasonable for me to become your lover. Then let me ask you something. What if my family also needed me to get married? Would you be willing to become my lover?" Ambrose froze. His expression darkened immediately. "You wouldn't. Why? You get married. I get married. Wouldn't that be fair?" Chapter 11. My questions echoed through the empty alley. Little by little, the color drained from Ambrose's face. He looked at me, then at Gail, who was still waiting quietly at the entrance of the alley. For the first time, cracks began to appear in the confidence he had always worn so naturally. He misunderstood, but I no longer wanted to explain, nor did I owe him an explanation. When I spoke again, there was a hint of self-mockery in my voice. "Ambrose, from beginning to end, you never believed we were equals, did you? You come from a powerful family. You need a marriage alliance to support your ambitions. I come from an ordinary family. I can't help your career. So in your eyes, I can only be a lover. You always said you loved me, but deep down, you looked down on me. You asked whether I regretted it. I truly don't." I sighed softly. A trace of regret lingered in my expression. After all, We really did love each other once. I don't want to use this ugly ending to condemn the version of myself who chose to be with you. We were too young back then. We thought love was forever. But we forgot that people change. The person I loved was the Ambrose from university. The Ambrose who stood on the athletic field singing love songs at the top of his lungs just to pursue me. The Ambrose who was willing to give up everything for love. The Ambrose who worked desperately to earn the freedom to choose his own marriage. Not the Ambrose standing before me now. The one willing to give me up for his ambitions. Perhaps, from his perspective, he had done nothing wrong, but I no longer liked him. That was why I had no regrets. Perhaps my mother had been right. Maybe Ambrose really was the trial of love I was destined to face. Unfortunately, I spent the best 7 years of my life tangled in that trial. But fortunately, my life was longer than 7 years. I allowed myself to grieve, to hurt, to have my heart broken, but I would never allow myself to remain trapped in the same place. I had ambitions, and my ambitions would never allow me to stop moving forward. So, Ambrose, it's really over between us. The words fell gently from my lips. I smiled, just as I always had. No, that's not true. But it was as if something inside Ambrose had finally shattered. His voice broke into a hoarse shout. His fists trembled from how tightly he clenched them. His eyes were red, as though tears might fall at any moment. Ellie, I don't want this to end. Yet as I looked at him, my heart remained perfectly calm. I even took a step back, just in case he lost control and accidentally hurt me. Not that I believed he would. And in that moment, I finally became certain I truly didn't love him anymore, because every emotion he displayed now only exhausted me. I felt nothing. I watched from a distance, unmoved. Then I turned away, walking past him, leaving him behind. Ambrose lifted a hand as though he wanted to stop me, but in the end, he did nothing. Just before I reached the corner, I looked back. He was still standing there, staring stubbornly in my direction. His shoulders were slightly hunched. He looked fragile, pitiful. His lips moved. And finally, he asked, Ellie, did I really make a mistake? I didn't answer. I simply turned away and never looked back. And that was my answer. Chapter 12. The walk home was actually quite short. Yet somehow, both of us slowed our pace without saying a word. I had originally planned to ask Gale to head back first. I wanted to sit alone for a while and enjoy the evening breeze, but he quietly sat down beside me. He didn't ask any questions, and I didn't feel like talking. Not until the stars illuminated the night sky. Not until the cool wind dried the tears on my face. Gale handed me a tissue. When he spoke, his voice carried a careful gentleness. Ellie, did he hurt you? I froze. The question sounded so familiar. My mother had asked me the same thing. At this point, there was nothing left to hide, so I sighed softly and smiled bitterly. We were together for 7 years. Next year, he's getting married, and he wanted me to be his lover. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but sometimes I wonder if maybe I'm just not someone people want to marry. Otherwise, after 7 years together, why had Ambrose never once thought about marrying me? Gale suddenly stopped moving. Then he stood up and crouched in front of me, looking at my reddened eyes. He seemed about to say something. Instead, he muttered a curse under his breath. What a jerk. Then he added, and a blind jerk at that. Gale was handsome and refined. He smiled often. When he was quiet, he resembled a gentle scholar. Seeing him so openly outraged felt strangely out of character. Yet somehow, it was incredibly endearing. I couldn't help laughing. You're right. Completely blind. Seeing me smile, his anger faded as well. A faint smile appeared on his lips. Are you going back? I nodded. Of course. My ambitions won't allow me to stay where I am. My love life was a complete mess. Ambrose wanted to destroy my career and force me back to his side. But he had misjudged me. I had never been the type to give up before reaching the end. Even if I ran headfirst into a wall and came away bleeding, I still wouldn't surrender, and I certainly wouldn't stop moving forward. Gale looked at me for a very long time. Then he stood up and held out his hand. That's good. The Ellie I know has always been this strong. Finally, he said. Then I wish you smooth sailing from this day forward. The wind stirred the little bell hanging by the window. Chime, chime. Its crisp sound rang through the evening air. I looked up at him and smiled brightly. Then let's wish the same for both of us. Chapter 13. 1 month later. During a sunset painted gold by the evening sky, Gale proposed to me. It happened suddenly. So suddenly that I almost couldn't believe it. He knelt on one knee and held out a diamond ring. His voice trembled as he confessed his feelings. Ellie, I know this is sudden, but it's a decision I've thought about countless times. Of course, I'm not trying to pressure you into being with me. I just want you to know something. You're not a little girl whom nobody loves. And you're definitely not someone who isn't suited for marriage. It's just that other people lacked the vision to see how wonderful you are. They were the ones who didn't deserve you. My heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, I remembered something I had said a month earlier. Maybe I'm just not someone people want to marry. To me, it had only been a casual complaint. Yet now, standing before me, he was giving me his answer. He was telling me that I was better than anyone else. He said, Ellie, don't be afraid. He told me he loved me. He told me he had never forgotten me. And then he confessed something else. The reason he had returned to the country wasn't for a vacation at all. He had heard that Ambrose and I had broken up. He had set aside his research and rushed home immediately. I just thought, at a time like this, you might need someone to comfort you. Looking back now, I underestimated Ellie. You were strong enough to heal on your own. As he said those words, he looked both shy and proud at the same time. I couldn't help laughing, but as I laughed, tears began to fall. I had imagined being proposed to countless times. Sometimes I pictured something grand, sometimes something extravagant. Yet when the moment finally arrived, it was neither. It was simple and infinitely moving. My parents stood nearby, watching me with tears in their eyes and smiles on their faces. They loved me, and because they loved me, they would never force me into any decision. So, I accepted Gale's ring. At that moment, it wasn't a shackle called marriage. It was a precious gift. A gift carrying the sincerity of a boy who had loved me for years. As the final tear slipped down my cheek, I spoke softly. I think I'd like to seriously consider it. Chapter 14. Half a month later, I received a call from Iris. She informed me that I had been nominated for Best Actress at the upcoming film festival. I needed to attend in person. I arrived early. While doing my makeup, a stylist I knew well leaned closer and began sharing the latest gossip. And the hottest topic, unsurprisingly, was Ambrose and Violet. I heard the Chan family officially announce their marriage alliance with the Sue family, but Ambrose still refuses to cooperate. Things got pretty ugly a few days ago. Do you think CEO Chan is actually planning to marry Violet? Violet has been unstoppable lately. She's stolen resources from so many people, and CEO Chan keeps indulging her. Isn't he worried it'll backfire one day? Then she paused and sighed. Ellie, honestly, you escaped a disaster. I've always felt that someone like Ambrose belongs to a completely different world from ours. I heard his parents were in a marriage alliance too. Recently, his father's illegitimate son showed up, and he's almost the same age as Ambrose. A family like that, it's not something people like us could ever accept. I opened my eyes. In the mirror, my makeup was flawless. Red lips, bright eyes. A slight smile made me look even more radiant. Not far away stood a familiar figure. Cold, distant, dark circles lingered beneath his eyes. His exhaustion was impossible to hide. Beside him, Violet clung to his arm, smiling brightly and sweetly. Yet he wasn't looking at her. Through the mirror, he was looking only at me. I was the first to look away. With a quiet scoff, I said, "You're right. I could never accept it." And that was exactly why I had chosen to let him go. "You may enter now." The curtains parted. Lifting my gown, I stepped into the venue. Then I paused. Reaching into my handbag, I took out the ring. After a moment of thought, I slid it onto the ring finger of my left hand. Chapter 15. In the end, the Best Actress award slipped through my fingers once again. It belonged to Violet. Standing beneath the spotlight, she delivered her acceptance speech. The brilliant lights shone down on her. At that moment, She looked like a true winner in life. Only 2 years after debuting, she had won the Best Actress title I had spent 10 years pursuing. Luxury endorsements surrounded her, and she had the heir of the Chan family protecting her every step of the way. How could she not be considered a winner? I sighed, exchanged a helpless glance with the director beside me, then stood up and quietly left before the ceremony ended. When I reached backstage, I unexpectedly ran into Ambrose. He was on the phone, furious. How could Violet have won Best Actress? Didn't I tell you not to interfere with today's awards? The person on the other end said something. Ambrose fell silent. Then he hung up. The next second, he stormed into the banquet hall, grabbed Violet by the wrist, and dragged her backstage. Violet cried out in pain, but Ambrose merely stared at her coldly. Was it you? Violet stiffened immediately. It wasn't me. The award belonged to me anyway. Ellie's acting is average. How could she possibly? Before she could finish, Ambrose's hand closed around her throat. His voice was terrifyingly cold. Violet, I never want to hear you say a single bad word about Ellie again. You're not worthy. Ellie has been in this industry for 10 years. She's won more awards than you can count. I forced those endorsements to terminate her contracts. Those brands didn't want to sign with you at all. If it weren't for me, they would have been lining up to work with her. Her popularity, her talent, you'll never catch up to either. Who do you think you are to judge her? I froze. I had never known that Ambrose thought so highly of me, yet it had also been Ambrose who publicly labeled me his lover. Ambrose who dismissed my acting in front of everyone. He had always been a hypocrite when it came to me. I let out a quiet laugh, then silently turned away from the drama. As I reached the exit, a crowd of reporters who had been waiting immediately surrounded me. Some offered sympathy. Some came to watch the spectacle. Others tried to stir up trouble. Miss Ellie, do you think losing Best Actress had anything to do with CEO Chan? Do you regret breaking up with CEO Chan now? Facing the cameras, I smiled softly. Then I raised my hand, revealing the diamond ring. I'm getting married. The moment those words fell, the man standing not far away instantly lost his composure. His eyes reddened. His face turned deathly pale. Shock filled his gaze as he stared at me. He strode toward me, only to have Violet grab his arm. I watched for a second, then stepped past the crowd, and left the banquet behind. Back inside my nanny van, Iris looked at me as though she wanted to ask something. I didn't feel like explaining. Just then, my phone rang. The moment I answered, a familiar voice came through. Ellie, I heard you're getting married. Apparently, he had been watching the live stream. Otherwise, the news couldn't have reached him so quickly. I smiled. Yeah, to who? His voice carried both anticipation and caution. For a long time, neither of us spoke, so long that all I could hear was our quiet breathing. Finally, I said slowly, possibly you. Silence. Then a startled shout exploded through the phone. I'm coming back. I have to come back immediately. But the next second, another furious voice roared in the background. You little brat. Get back here. You've already used up 3 years' worth of vacation this year alone. His advisor, listening to the chaotic shouting on the other end of the call. I found myself relaxing for the first time in a very long while. The tension I had carried for years finally loosened. It was nice, really nice. This was enough, more than enough. Chapter 16. The last time I saw Ambrose was on a film set. By then, Violet had probably done something to anger him. As a result, Ambrose stopped supporting her, and that signal alone was enough. All the people whose opportunities she had stolen before began returning their resentment tenfold. In the end, the backlash came, just as everyone had predicted. But I had no time to concern myself with other people's fortunes. I was busy convincing Gale to focus on his research instead of constantly complaining about being unable to return home. Busy filming new movies and shooting new advertisements. Oh, right. Director Oscar found me again. Although Ambrose had publicly dismissed my acting ability that night, causing director Oscar to initially lose interest in me, I still attended the audition, and I passed. Very smoothly. Just as Ambrose had once said, I had spent 10 years in the entertainment industry. My acting skills and abilities spoke for themselves. Director Oscar later apologized for underestimating me. I simply shook my head and told him I didn't mind. As I was leaving, however, he added, "Actually, although CEO Chan recommended Violet, he never intended for her to audition. Later, he told me that he would only invest in the film if you were cast as the female lead." I froze. Director Oscar continued, "But honestly, even without him, I doubt any investor would refuse once they learned you were the lead actress. Your talent is remarkable." For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. I had never known that story, but it no longer mattered. In the end, I simply smiled. "Thank you." Chapter 17. By the time filming wrapped up, it was already past midnight. The sky was still dark and hazy. Only then did I realize it had started snowing again. Another winter. It seemed I had a strange connection with snow. I met Ambrose during the first snowfall, and 7 years later, during another first snowfall, I broke up with him. Perhaps that moment had always foreshadowed our ending. A cold ending, one that buried all the beautiful memories beneath a layer of ice. I stood quietly outside, waiting for my car. Then a trembling voice sounded behind me. "Ellie." I turned around. It was Ambrose. He stepped beside me. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I've spent a lot of time thinking, and I realized that I was truly wrong." I paused and looked at him. Only then did I notice how exhausted he appeared. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Bloodshot veins filled them. Stubble covered his jaw. He looked utterly worn down. There was even a faint smell of alcohol lingering around him. Without thinking, I took a subtle step farther away. Ambrose noticed. His face instantly paled, yet he only let out a bitter laugh. "You were with me without wanting anything from me. I always thought you could never leave me. Otherwise, why would you come back every time I coaxed you after a breakup? But I forgot something. You came back because you loved me, and I repaid that love by trampling all over it." His voice broke. Then he whispered, "Ellie, I'm sorry." After a pause, he added, "If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't fail you." As he spoke, a trace of hope appeared in his eyes. A fragile hope, thin as a spider's silk, and yet I knew I had to destroy it myself. So I told him, "If we could start over, Ambrose, then when you met me, pretend you never knew me." The expression on his face went completely blank. His tears fell before he could stop them, dropping onto the snow-covered ground, freezing instantly. I looked at him, then smiled softly. "I don't want to keep entangling myself with you anymore." Such simple words, yet they seemed to completely shatter him. His eyes were red, but he still nodded. "Okay." When I got into the car, Ambrose remained standing there, watching me, just as he had when I first told him we were over. But no matter which time it was, I never looked back. Chapter 18. After getting out of the car and walking toward my apartment building, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure standing in the distance. My heart skipped a beat. Then I ran, faster and faster, straight toward him, and he caught me in his arms. At that exact moment, the sun rose. Warm sunlight broke through the cold of the season's first snow, chasing away the darkness of the night. He smiled and said, "Ellie, I'm home." I looked toward the horizon. The sunlight was dazzling. Snowflakes drifted gently from the sky. But I knew something. The winters of my future would never feel cold again, because this time, I had caught the rising sun.